Hi everyone, it's Justin here, Voices for Voices. Thank you so much for watching and listening, whether you're here in the United States or across the world. We're grateful to have you with us. If you could do a quick favor that is free, if you can give us a thumbs up, like, follow, subscribe, share, reshare, repost, and maybe even pull out your phone and share the Voices for Voices podcast with maybe 25 of your contacts. We have huge goals, one of which is to reach and to help at least 3 billion people over the course of my lifetime and beyond. And we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for our viewers and listeners. So thank you for tuning in, whether this is your first show or you've been with us from the beginning. We are delighted to have our guest today back from last year. So making this annual interview. We were hoping to do this in person, but my schedule just didn't allow for that to happen. So we're hoping to do that here in the next couple of months. Is to do a show from our guest office in person. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, the District Attorney of San Diego County, Summer Stephan. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us on the show.
It's so good to be with you and to have the voice of the victims and survivors be brought forward on this show.
Absolutely. And you do a very good job of not just the actions of the convictions and upholding the law in your county, but you do a good job. I would say great because I don't see other district attorneys across the United States really communicate about that, letting your constituents know what's going on in the community. How did that, I guess, strategy come about that you wanted to not only have those actions, but also just sharing what's going on? You have periodic updates that I see that you're able to share directly with your constituents.
Yeah, so that wasn't intuitive for me. Having grown up in public service, we tend to do our jobs. For 28 years, I was in the courtrooms fighting for the most vulnerable to get justice for children who are harmed, women, children, men, boys, everybody. And you just do it quietly. But I realized when I became the elected district attorney that the trust with the community is built on information and communication. And that the benefit of that isn't just to kind of talk about what we're doing, but really to allow through that trust for people to report what they see to law enforcement, to
Mm.
have victims and survivors come forward and report the harm that has happened to them so that we can take action. So the benefits of communicating are this trust building and then the ability for victims and community to feel comfortable letting us know what's happening so we can protect them, so we can take action.
Absolutely. And this time of the year, this week, actually, you have pretty big event, the Comic-Con in San Diego, and uh, I happened to see your video, which I thought was just spot on. Talking about how. Uh, People that are not nice people, I guess is the easiest way to say it. How they prey on their victims, and with Comic-Con being a big part of it, dressing up as a superhero, of how it can make it a little easier for the people that are unfortunately looking to harm others. Can you maybe just do like a little refresh of that video so we can share
Sure,
that?
sure, absolutely. So, San Diego County, is home to a lot of incredible events, Comic-Con being one of them. And, I'm a fan of Comic-Con and superheroes and, Star Trek and all of those things that I've loved for years. But whenever you have an event that's bringing in 150,000 people, um, you have traffickers that use the congestion and the event to bring victims of human trafficking, mostly for to sell them for prostitution and to make a profit, because you've got a concentration of tourists, you've got so much activity, you've got police, tied up with trying to manage traffic and everything that's going on to keep the community safe, so they can hide within those big events. Comic-Con is one of them, but whether it's the football games we just
Mm,
witnessed, or, different events where a large amount of people are coming, you find it's not the event itself, it's the ability for these traffickers to make higher profit because of the concentration of people that are willing to spend money. So they advertise these victims and they bring them, some are local from San Diego, but from Las Vegas, Oakland, across the United States to the big event. So my warning was, we are not gonna sleep. We're gonna keep an eye on you. We want the community to report anything suspicious that's happening in our hotels, motels, our Airbnbs and Bs, and our human trafficking task force will be there. In fact, for anybody who didn't take my word for it, last night we arrested 9. So again, when I tell you that we're alert and we are going to keep protecting these victims, and you're not going to be able to hide in big events or be able to advertise them for sale. Human beings are not for sale. Children are not for sale, and you can't post them like they're a piece of, hamburger in a drive-through, or post them on these social media websites like, there's some kind of product. They're not a product. They're human beings. And so this is the message, and I hope people listen because we're going to keep going.
yeah. Yeah, and it's fantastic, and that's how I came across the work that you were doing last year in the news conference that you held, and it is a breath of fresh air to have. I wish in my area there was more active and involvement against people who are preying on children at the different activities and games, uh, and I think it's great to be able to, as you just alluded to, that even just last night that there were people that might think that like talk is cheap, but when it comes down to it, it's not. You're backing it up with the resources, and I think that's a big thing. And when you mentioned just a bit ago about having police, assign, doing traffic duty and all of these other aspects that brings a large event, it takes those resources away from being able to help out with the task force um, to help kids, families feel safe when they're in your town, my town, and I think it's a big thing, no matter wherever we live, that we have public officials like yourself, that you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk, you're putting action to those words. And I I I don't I wouldn't want to be somebody who has bad intentions because um, I I think, and it's just my 2 cents, um, that a lot of traffickers are being exposed, and when they're being exposed, they don't like that, and when they don't like that, then they sometimes go after their victims, survivors of human trafficking, however, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, however that may be, and that can scare a lot of people of just going, oh my gosh, I I can't tell anybody, and here you are, you're like, no, we have the resources, we want you to tell us, safe space, and instead of having a person kind of be be afraid for many years of, oh, I can't say anything because I was told this. Uh, do you feel that the community is following up with you? Like, you feel like they're getting it and able to feel safe to be able to tell? It's one thing for you to share that, but it's another for victims, survivors to come forward. Has that process eased for survivors and victims, or do you see that getting harder with just as the days go by?
You really hit it on the nose. It's the idea that we sometimes think that it's easy for people to come forward and report abuse, especially children, and we sometimes blame them even for not reporting. And we say, well, why, it's been several years, why now? And we attribute sometimes bad motives, or that they're not telling the truth. But the reality is that it's really hard to report being abused. And many times the abusers and the traffickers, they make themselves almost like a family member to
Mm,
the victim. They build those kind of what the experts call trauma bonds, where the
mm,
victims are so attached, to the abusers, that they think that they're the only one that's there to protect them. And this is what makes it really hard. So it takes time. It's not overnight that we've built this trust. It's kind of by saying something and then doing it. And it's not just me, it's bringing a whole community of well-trained law enforcement in a task force. Like the operations we go on, we always have victim advocates that are there that can support not just like a scary scene, but come
mm,
in and provide that comfort and shelter and trauma. And we built what we call one safe places, where people can just walk in and just kind of tip their toe into reporting. No one is going to force them into it, but they can get some clothing, get a sweater, feel comfortable to report. So it's not a one off, I
mm,
think it's a journey, and we are seeing the results of that journey in that San Diego seems to have a disproportionate number of cases where the victims of human trafficking themselves are reporting, which
yeah.
means that they are seeing themselves as victims and as deserving
Mhm.
of a life of freedom and dignity, which the abusers, they keep them trapped in shame, whether it's child molest, sexual abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's human trafficking. All those have these um, wheel of control that the abuser, the trafficker, puts on the victim to to delay or to have them never report.
Oh, yeah, that's uh it, yeah, this thought came to mind that if if a parent may be abusing their own children, that 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 trauma bond is like we're family, like everything's okay, there's nothing wrong. And, and you're right, it could take many, many years to have an individual feel that opportunity, that safe space to be able to share that. And it's really it's a hard thing to do because it's not trafficking, and these aren't like terms that are they're not fun to talk about, and people don't um people might try to say on their resume that they got a certain education and all these things, but when somebody comes forward and talks about these topics and these areas, nobody does it for fun. I mean, because that's one thing that I've come across in the last year is, oh, well, they're lying. It's been this many years and they're just making it up. And it's like, you know what? Like people don't that people aren't going to come out and talk about because it's very personal, and some of the things that go on are very, very personal and physical and deal with the bo parts of the body. Yeah, and it's great that you have this one safe spaces where individuals are able to come and have that advocate, because it's one thing for um, a survivor of anything to share with law enforcement. They may have different views on that, but to actually have a advocate who's been there and done that, I guess, is one way that could be shared. Uh, to talk, one-on-one with them, because that advocate's been there. Law enforcement is doing their job, they're doing their missions, but to actually have that person also there that is talking almost their language, like as if it's a foreign language, which it's not. But I think that's a huge thing. Now, adding the advocate to the task force, is that something that started in the beginning, or over time you were seeing that, hey, this might be a good addition to what we're doing?
For us in San Diego, it's been a journey of learning. But one thing that I think, I did correctly is intuitively, I always wanted to listen to the voice of the victims and survivors and learn from them. I didn't assume that we have it all figured out in law enforcement. We know a lot. We know our specialty, our expertise. I know how to prosecute in
Mhm.
the courtroom and prove cases. That's different than the mindset of what a survivor, a victim needs. And when you assume what they need and how they want to be treated, you miss something.
Mhm.
So I just asked a lot of questions as we began our work and being able to build up the task force and doing the research to recognize that there is a big problem. It's hidden. People look for like physical signs of abuse or chains or someone kidnapped off the street, but the signs are so subtle that they were being missed by law enforcement. So by asking those questions of the victims and survivors, we knew this was an essential element because at the end of the day, you make your arrest, but what's going to happen with this victim? They are completely dependent on the trafficker. They don't have a bank account.
Mhm.
They are just the cash producing machine through their own exploitation, usually in prostitution or child pornography. So, how are they going to, where are they going to spend the night? How are they going to be safe? How are they going to eat? So, by listening to them, we did build it in, or, early on into our task force that we formed in 2016 with 15 different agencies that work hard. And that's why when you have big events and you've got a lot of patrol that is diverted to different things, there's still the task force focused on responding and continuing to do our job.
Excellent. And the more the task force does, the more experience they get. So in like you said, in 2016 at the outset versus where we're at in 2026 is a lot of learnings, and I think that's good for people to understand just about anything is learning's a good thing. I think it whatever the subject may be that if we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to get better and communicate better and have people who truly not only are doing their job in the task force, but just as a human being, they're going, this could have been my daughter, this could have been my son. And it has a whole new level, kind of an emotional tie to it, and that's where the one of the ways that the trauma can come into a task force member's home at the end of the day because they come home to their families, and sometimes it's hard to separate that the work versus the home life with so many people unfortunately taking their own lives. And uh, really, if they understood the big impact that they were having, um, whatever peace that they were looking for, that it's truly uh, remarkable work to do that. Because I even say with doctors and nurses like that, those are professions like I just I can never do. And so the people that do that, they're special individuals and your excuse me, on your task force and other areas. It's also takes a very special type of person to be involved in those operations, and then the communication, and then having the advocate all built in there, kind of as a support team, as opposed to just seeing one officer, that it's a group effort, and you're trying to cover all the bases to have those individuals, not just when the trafficker is arrested off the street, that they are going to have some trauma, some level of trauma inside, and it may take many years, even after a trafficker is taken off the street. So you kind of have the trauma that's going on with the trafficking, and then if the trafficker is taken off the street, it it it's not like I'll say like a sprained ankle where you can just see it and be like, oh, okay, I can see it healing. Like the mind is a lot different. So thank you for including that that mind aspect, because that's a big deal to people.
Yeah, and your show obviously focuses a lot on mental health, and that's really important. And you've hit on a lot of important areas. One of them is the trauma for the victims and recognizing that there isn't just arresting and prosecuting is not going to be an instant cure. It's we have to be able as a civilization to bring the supportive systems to let people really free themselves of their own trauma. You know, we recovered a 13-year-old
Mm,
the other day from the streets. It's hard to imagine. And a 17 pregnant girl recently. And, you know, it's not like they ran into the courageous police officers' arms because they recovered them. In their own mind, they had been told over and over that law enforcement is the enemy, you know,
mhm,
and can't be trusted. And so it took some time, you know, in therapy and being able to give them the supportive systems and building that trust by keeping our word, what we say to them, for them to begin that true healing journey. And then another thing you hit on is the professionals, the officers, the prosecutors that do this day in and day out. You know, for many years, we didn't focus on our own mental health from the basically being witness to trauma time and time again, officers walking in on the worst scenes. And so we are spending more time trying to make sure we're well ourselves in order to properly and compassionately and not gonna lose our patience as we deal with these difficult issues. And you know, it's a really hard time for parents, and we see, for example, a lot of European countries now banning the use of social media
mm,
for kids under the age of 16 and 15. We've seen so many suicides, so
mm,
much trafficking, recruitment happen online for kids. So I want to make sure that your listeners, your viewers, also pay attention to those mental health signs of kids withdrawing, of spending too much time online, and changing behavior, changing their set of friends. There could be more going on. They could be getting cyberbullied or
mm,
recruited by a predator or forced into sexploitation, doing things that they don't want to do with their bodies. So it's just more complicated time. So more effort to pay attention to those mental health signs, be alert, learn, study as a parent, as a guardian, as anybody who cares for a child, and having that communication, not just through text,
mhm.
and can be a lifesaver. And we've heard those stories from victims and survivors, many of whom were recruited at a young age online.
Wow. So how do you do it? How with the work that you do? I would assume that because this is just one area that you work in and work on. How does somebody like yourself uh, uh, make the mind stronger, or any tips to anybody that's in a leadership role that how they could uh, yeah, I guess how they can separate the job from the family aspect.
So it's a good question, and it's of course harder because I am now an elected district attorney since 2018. So there's a lot more, not just the pressures of the case, but having people loving to threaten, and that's always there. But I think my saving grace has always been being able to focus not kind of internally and personalized, but focus on service and on others. It's almost a self-feeding, self like recovery,
Hmm.
because I'm constantly, by not focusing so much on what's happening to me while being alert to it, it's kind of the purpose driven life, focusing on the service on others. Also, like I drink a lot of water. I know that seems strange,
No,
but
that's good.
remaining hydrated, being healthy by hydrating and, focusing on, eating an apple, doing something that's quick because I can't like sit down for, big meals, but having nutrition that is healthy, that can sustain, the work and breathing, exercising, all those things. Of course, I can't do them except in like 10-minute
Hmm.
increments, but you could still fit them in the day if you think about it. And, I have my family, my faith, all the things that all of us have different things that we
Hmm.
can count on. And but I'm really still very honored to serve. And every time we're able to bring somebody out of that dark tunnel of being victimized into the light and provide them with justice and care, it's really worth it. And I really appreciate being here to highlight that and to kind of let anybody out there know you deserve to be safe, you deserve to have respect and dignity. And if you're in any situation that doesn't provide that, from family or from people you're dating or somebody who you think is a friend but is really a predator, find a way to break away. Find those things in your community where you can get a support system and break away. Even if you're not reporting to police,
Hmm.
which I encourage, at least find a way to leave that situation.
Absolutely. And for those watching and listening, the bystander effect, if you see something that's going on, don't keep walking, don't keep moving on because you don't want to be involved or whatever the reason may be that uh, you might be that person's last resort by you just happening to walk by and see something and to do something about it, to be one of our guests, she calls it being an upstander. So kind of uh, instead of just walking by, stepping in and doing whatever you or I or any viewer or listener that's able to do, because uh, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and like you said, we all deserve dignity and respect, and to feel safe and healthy, and that can't happen just on our own. We have to, as a society, as just the human race, and all across the globe, to uh, have that mindset of truly, if you see something, say something. If something just doesn't feel right, there, our intuition is right. I think more than it's wrong. And the worst thing that could happen is you get in touch with authorities and find out that the situation isn't a bad situation, that it's a that there's more to it. And so I always try to share that as well, be, because we're not the average everyday person doesn't have a lot of that knowledge, but to be able to reach out and say, hey, this didn't seem right, this doesn't look right. Can somebody come and check this situation out? And then you can continue on your way. But at least let the proper authorities know, uh, it, and let them take care of it, and not just walk by because we see something that's going on, or we're trying to pretend it's not, because unfortunately things are going on, and it's up to us to share and report, not just the survivors and the victims. It's up to us as a society as a whole to do that. Uh, Thank you so much, for joining us, DA Summer, Stephan. I always enjoy our conversations. Look forward to doing a show in person, and we'll let your staff know. And I want to give a big thank you to your staff, especially Tanya, for making this come about, being able to fit this in your schedule the week of another big event that's Comic-Con, and then you mentioned the football matches that occurred as well that were breeding grounds per se for people who may be up to no good. Uh, so thank you very much. We're so
You,
honored to have you with us.
I always enjoy talking to you and the substance of this conversation. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, you as well. Take
Bye
care.
bye.